And we're back. Exodus chapter 11, verse 1. God said to Moses, I'm going to hit Pharaoh and Egypt one final time, and then he'll let you go. When he releases you, that will be the end of Egypt for you. He won't be able to get rid of you fast enough. So here's what you do. Tell the people to ask each man from his neighbor and each woman from her neighbor for things made of silver and gold. God saw to it that the Egyptians liked the people. Also, Moses was greatly admired by the Egyptians, a respected public figure among both Pharaoh's servants and the people at large. Then Moses confronted Pharaoh. God's message: at midnight I will go through Egypt, and every firstborn child in Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl working at her handmill. Also the firstborn of animals. Widespread wailing will erupt all over the country, lament such as has never been and never will be again. But against the Israelites, man, woman, or animal, there won't be so much as a dog's bark, so that you'll know that God makes a clear distinction between Egypt and Israel. Then all these servants of yours will grovel before me, begging me to leave. Leave, you and all the people who follow you, and I will most certainly leave. Moses, seething with anger, left Pharaoh. God said to Moses, Pharaoh's not going to listen to a thing you say, so that the signs of my presence and work are going to multiply in the land of Egypt. Moses and Aaron had performed all these signs in Pharaoh's presence, but God turned Pharaoh more stubborn than ever. Yet again, he refused to release the Israelites from his land. Exodus chapter 12. God said to Moses and Aaron, while still in Egypt, this month is to be the first month of the year for you. Address the whole community of Israel. Tell them that on the 10th of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one lamb to a house. If the family is too small for a lamb, then share it with a close neighbor, depending on the number of persons involved. Be mindful of how much each person will eat. Your lamb must be a healthy male, 1 year old. You can select it from either the sheep or the goats. Keep it penned until the 14th day of this month, and then slaughter it. The entire community of Israel will do this at dusk. Then take some of the blood and smear it on the 2 doorposts of the lintel of the houses in which you will eat. Then take some of the blood and smear it on the 2 doorposts of the lintel of the houses in which you will eat. Eat it. You are to eat the meat, roasted in the fire that night, along with bread made without yeast and bitter herbs. Don't eat any of it raw or boiled in water. Make sure it's roasted, the whole animal, head, legs, and innards. Don't leave any of it until morning. If there are leftovers, burn them in the fire. And here is how you are to eat it. Be fully dressed with your sandals on and your stick in your hand. Eat in a hurry. It's the Passover to God. I will go through the land of Egypt on this night and strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, whether human or animal, and bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am God. The blood will serve as a sign on the houses where you live. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. No disaster will touch you when I strike the land of Egypt. This will be a memorial day for you. You will celebrate it as a festival to God down through the generations, a fixed festival celebration to be observed always. You will eat unraised bread, matzoth, for 7 days. On the first day, get rid of all yeast from your houses. Anyone who eats anything with yeast from the first day to the 17th day will be cut off from Israel. The first and the 17th day are set aside as the first and the 7th day are set aside as holy. Do no work on those days. Only what you have to do for meals. Each person can do that. Keep the festival of unraised bread. This marks the exact day I brought you out in force from the land of Egypt. Honor the day down through your generations, a fixed festival to be observed always. In the first month, beginning on the 14th day at evening until the 21st day at evening, you are to eat unraised bread. For those 7 days, not a trace of yeast is to be found in your houses. Anyone, whether a visitor or a native of the land, who eats anything raised shall be cut off from the community of Israel. Don't eat anything raised, only matzoth. Moses assembled all the elders of Israel. He said, select a lamb for your families and slaughter the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the bowl of blood and smear it on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts. No one is to leave the house until morning. God will pass through to strike Egypt down. When he sees the blood on the lintel and the 2 doorposts, God will pass over the doorway. He won't let the destroyer enter your house to strike you down with ruin. Keep this word. It's the law for you and your children forever. When you enter the land which God will give you as he promised, keep doing this. And when your children say to you, why are we doing this? Tell them, it's the Passover sacrifice to God who passed over the homes of the Israelites in Egypt when he hit Egypt with death, but rescued us. The people bowed and worshipped. The Israelites then went and did what God had commanded Moses and Aaron. They did it all. At midnight, God struck every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, right down to the firstborn of the prisoner locked up in jail. Also the firstborn of the animals. Pharaoh got up that night, he and all his servants and everyone else in Egypt. What wild wailing and lament in Egypt. There wasn't a house in which someone wasn't dead. Pharaoh called in Moses and Aaron that very night and said, get out of here and be done with you. You and your Israelites, go worship God on your own terms. And yes, take your sheep and cattle as you've insisted, but go and bless me. The Egyptians couldn't wait to get rid of them. They pushed them to hurry up, saying, we're all as good as dead. The people grabbed their bread dough before it had risen, bundled their bread bowls in their cloaks, and threw them over their shoulders. The Israelites had already done what Moses had told them. They had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold things and clothing. God saw to it that the Egyptians liked the people, and so readily gave them what they asked for. Oh yes, they picked those Egyptians clean. The Israelites moved on from Ramses to Succoth, and about 600,000 on foot. Besides their dependents, Hebrews and non-Hebrews alike set out, not to mention the large flocks and herds of livestock. They baked unraised cakes with the bread dough they had brought out of Egypt. It hadn't raised. They'd been rushed out of Egypt and hadn't time to fix food for the journey. Verse 40. The Israelites had lived in Egypt 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, to the very day, God's entire army left Egypt. God kept watch all night, watching over the Israelites as he brought them out of Egypt. Because God kept watch, all Israel for all generations will honor God by keeping watch this night, a watch night. God said to Moses and Aaron, these are the rules for the Passover. No foreigners are to eat it. Any slave, if he's paid for and circumcised, can eat it. No casual visitor or hired hand can eat it. Eat it in one house. Don't take the meat outside the house. Don't break any of the bones. The whole community of Israel is to be included in the meal. If an immigrant is staying with you and wants to keep the Passover to God, every male in his family must be circumcised. Then he can participate in the meal. He will then be treated as a native son, but no uncircumcised person can eat it. The same law applies both to the native and the immigrant who is staying with you. All the Israelites did exactly as God commanded Moses and Aaron. That very day, God brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt, tribe by tribe. Exodus 13. God spoke to Moses, saying, set apart every firstborn to me. The first one to come from the womb among the Israelites, whether person or animal, is mine. Moses said to the people, always remember this day. This is the day when you came out of Egypt from a house of slavery. God brought you out of here with a powerful hand. Don't eat any raised bread. You are leaving in the spring month of Abib. When God brings you into the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, which he promised to your fathers to give you, a land lavish with milk and honey, you are to observe this service during this month. You are to eat unraised bread for 7 days. On the 7th day there is a festival celebration to God. Only unraised bread is to be eaten for 7 days. There is not to be a trace of anything fermented, no yeast anywhere. Tell your child on that day, this is because of what God did for me when I came out of Egypt. The day of observance will be like a sign on your hand, a memorial between your eyes, and the teaching of God in your mouth. It was with a powerful hand that God brought you out of Egypt. Follow these instructions at the set time, year after year after year. When God brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he promised you and your fathers, and turns it over to you, you are to set aside the first birth out of every womb to God. Every first birth from your livestock belongs to God. You can redeem every first birth of a donkey if you want to buy substituting a lamb. If you decide not to redeem it, you must break its neck. Redeem every firstborn child among your sons. When the time comes and your son asks you, what does this mean? You tell him, God brought us out of Egypt, out of a house of slavery with a powerful hand. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, God killed every firstborn in Egypt, the firstborn of both humans and animals. That's why I make a sacrifice for every first male birth from the womb to God and redeem every firstborn son. The observance functions like a sign on your hands or a symbol on the middle of your forehead. God brought us out of Egypt with a powerful hand. It so happened that after Pharaoh released the people, God didn't lead them by the road through the land of the Philistines, which was the shortest route. For God thought, if the people encounter war, they'll change their minds and go back to Egypt. So God led the people on the wilderness road, looping around the Red Sea. The Israelites left Egypt in military formation. I didn't know that, but that they left in military formation. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him. Blah, 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 blah. Yes, okay. For Joseph had made the Israelites solemnly swear to do it, saying, God will surely hold you accountable, so make sure you bring my bones from here with you. Yes, okay. Verse 20, they moved on from Succoth and then camped at Etham at the edge of the wilderness. God went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud during the day to guide them on the way, and at night in a pillar of fire to give them light. Thus they could travel both day and night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night never left the people.
That's what I was going to say regarding the verse before, right?
Mm-hmm.
A couple verses before, where it said that there was a shorter route, but God didn't allow them to go through the shorter route because they might change.
They would have gone through to the Philistine territory.
Exactly. That's what happens with us. Sometimes
we take the shorter route.
Yeah, and God won't allow us to go through certain things that we go through. That God allows us to go through. It's the long route because we cannot go back. If we go back.
The shortcuts probably lead you right back to where you came from,
and then that could be our death.
It wouldn't make any sense to be rescued if you're just going to turn around and go right back and then be killed. Exactly. Sometimes better, not always shortcuts.
No.
Don't always take shortcuts.
Go down allow God to lead you down the path that He has for you, no matter how long. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's tedious. But you learn a lot, you grow, and in the end, it's gonna be all worth it.
Oh yeah.
Just like in TV shows when they say, "Hey, I have a shortcut," and they end up lost.
Yep, no shortcuts.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna end it there.
Is it okay if I can pray?
Yes, Mr. Israel, you can pray.
Lord, we thank you, God, for having everything that we do, and we thank you, God, for controlling our body, and we thank you, oh God, for making you cover up us with clothes, and we thank you for having everybody. Amen.
Amen.